Chapter 3. The Maritime Jade Road, 2000 BCE to 1000 CE, was established by the animist indigenous peoples of Taiwan and the Philippines, and later expanded throughout Southeast Asia. The network operated for 3,000 years. Philippine jade artifacts, made from white and green nephrite and dating as far back as 1500 BC, have been discovered at a number of archaeological excavations in the Philippines since the 1930s. The artifacts have been both tools like chisels, and ornaments such as earrings, bracelets, and beads. Jade was discovered by the animist Taiwanese indigenous peoples in Taiwan and was mined soon after in 2000 BCE. During this time, migrations by Austronesians from Taiwan began southward towards the Philippines, which also resulted in some animist indigenous peoples from the Philippines to back migrate towards Taiwan. Indigenous Filipinos soon began processing the jade from Taiwan for trade as technological advances were met. This initial trade between island communities established the first phase of the Maritime Jade Road. With the advent of further technologies propagated by indigenous Filipinos, more styles were made to process raw jade from Taiwan. These jade crafts became sought after in many places in Southeast Asia, which led to the expansion of the network to Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Cambodia. Vietnam afterwards learned to process the Taiwanese raw jade, and added a healthy competition in the trade network. Most of the jade crafts were still manufactured and processed in the Philippines. By 500 CE, the trade network began to weaken, and by 1000 CE, the trade route's jade production formally stopped, although trade of other goods continued and expanded towards India and China. At this period, Southeast Asia became influenced by the Maritime Silk Road. Throughout its history, the Maritime Jade Road was fully independent from the Maritime Silk Road. In its productive history of 3,000 years, peaking between 2000 BCE to 500 CE, the animist-led Maritime Jade Road became known as one of the most extensive sea-based trade networks of a single geological material in the prehistoric world. It is also one of the major achievements of the animist peoples of the region. Thousands of artifacts made and traded through the Maritime Jade Road have been recovered from multiple archaeological sites. The network likely waned due to later aggressions inputted by cultures outside of Southeast Asia such as India and China. Peace was essential in the continuation of the sea jade network, as seen in the case of the Philippines, the main jade manufacturing area, where the islands experienced at least 1,500 years of near absolute peace from 500 BCE to 1000 CE, coinciding with the operations of the Jade Network. Taiwan, officially the Republic of China, ROC, is a country in East Asia. It shares maritime borders with the People's Republic of China, PRC, to the northwest, Japan to the northeast, and the Philippines to the south. The main island of Taiwan has an area of 35,808 square kilometers, 13,826 square miles, with mountain ranges dominating the eastern two-thirds and plains in the western third, where its highly urbanized population is concentrated. The capital is Taipei, which, along with New Taipei and Keelung, forms the largest metropolitan area of Taiwan. Other major cities include Kaohsiung, Taichung, Tainan, and Dalian. With 23.57 million inhabitants, Taiwan is among the most densely populated countries in the world. Austronesian-speaking ancestors of Taiwanese indigenous peoples settled the island around 6,000 years ago. In the 17th century, large-scale Han Chinese immigration to western Taiwan began under a Dutch colony and continued under the Kingdom of Tungning. The island was annexed in 1683 by the Qing dynasty of China, and ceded to the Empire of Japan in 1895. The Republic of China, which had overthrown the Qing in 1911, took control of Taiwan on behalf of the World War II allies following the surrender of Japan in 1945. The resumption of the Chinese Civil War resulted in the ROC's loss of mainland China to forces of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and retreat to Taiwan in 1949. Its effective jurisdiction has since been limited to Taiwan and numerous smaller islands. In the early 1960s, Taiwan entered a period of rapid economic growth and industrialization called the Taiwan Miracle. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the ROC transitioned from a one-party military dictatorship to a multi-party democracy with a semi-presidential system. Taiwan's export-oriented industrial economy is the 21st largest in the world by nominal GDP, and 20th largest by PPP measures, with major contributions from steel, machinery, electronics, and chemical manufacturing. Taiwan is a developed country, ranking 15th in GDP per capita. It is ranked highly in terms of political and civil liberties, education, healthcare, and human development. The political status of Taiwan is contentious. The ROC no longer represents China as a member of the United Nations, after UN members voted in 1971 to recognize the PRC instead. Meanwhile, the ROC continued to claim to be the legitimate representative of China and its territory, although this has been downplayed since its democratization in the 1990s. Taiwan is claimed by the PRC, which refuses diplomatic relations with countries that recognize the ROC. Taiwan maintains official diplomatic relations with 14 out of 193 UN member states and the Holy See, though many others maintain unofficial diplomatic ties with Taiwan through representative offices and institutions that function as de facto embassies and consulates. International organizations in which the PRC participates either refuse to grant membership to Taiwan or allow it to participate only on a non-state basis under various names. Domestically, the major political contention is between parties favoring eventual Chinese unification and promoting a pan-Chinese identity contrasted with those aspiring to formal international recognition and promoting a Taiwanese identity, although both sides have moderated their positions to broaden their appeal. Taiwan was joined to the Asian mainland in the late Pleistocene, until sea levels rose about 10,000 years ago. Fragmentary human remains dated 20,000 to 30,000 years ago have been found on the island, as well as later artifacts of a Paleolithic culture. Around 6,000 years ago, Taiwan was settled by farmers, most likely from what is now southeast China. They are believed to be the ancestors of today's Taiwanese indigenous peoples, whose languages belong to the Austronesian language family, but show much greater diversity than the rest of the family, which spans a huge area from maritime Southeast Asia west to Madagascar and east as far as New Zealand, Hawaii, and Easter Island. This has led linguists to propose Taiwan as the Urimat of the family, from which seafaring peoples dispersed across Southeast Asia and the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Han Chinese fishermen began settling in the Penghu Islands in the 13th century. Hostile tribes, and a lack of valuable trade products, meant that few outsiders visited the main island until the 16th century. During the 16th century, visits to the coast by fishermen and traders from Fujian, as well as Chinese and Japanese pirates, became more frequent. The Dutch East India Company attempted to establish a trading outpost on the Penghu Islands, also known as the Pescadores, in 1622, but it was driven off by Ming forces. In 1624, the company established a stronghold called Fort Zealandia on the coastal islet of Taihuan, which is now part of the main island at Anping, Tainan. When the Dutch arrived, they found southwestern Taiwan already frequented by a mostly transient Chinese population numbering close to 1,500. David Wright, a Scottish agent of the company who lived on the island in the 1650s, described the lowland areas of the island as being divided among 11 chiefdoms ranging in size from 2 settlements to 72. Some of these fell under Dutch control, including the Kingdom of Middog in the central western plains, while others remained independent. The company encouraged farmers to immigrate from Fujian and work the lands under Dutch control. By the 1660s, some 30,000 to 50,000 Chinese were living on the island. In 1626, the Spanish Empire landed on and occupied northern Taiwan as a trading base, first at Keelung and in 1628 building Fort San Domingo at Tam Sui. This colony lasted 16 years until 1642, when the last Spanish fortress fell to Dutch forces. The Dutch then marched south, subduing hundreds of villages in the western plains between their new possessions in the north and their base at Taihuan. Following the fall of the Ming dynasty in Beijing in 1644, Koxinga, Zheng Chenggong, pledged allegiance to the Yongle Emperor of Southern Ming and attacked the Qing dynasty along the southeastern coast of China. In 1661, under increasing Qing pressure, he moved his forces from his base in Xiamen to Taiwan, expelling the Dutch in the following year. Some analysts consider his regime to be loyal to the Ming, while others argue that he acted as an independent ruler and his intentions were unclear. After being ousted from Taiwan, the Dutch allied with the new Qing dynasty in China against the Zheng regime in Taiwan. Following some skirmishes, the Dutch retook the northern fortress at Keelung in 1664. Zheng Jing sent troops to dislodge the Dutch, but they were unsuccessful. The Dutch held out at Keelung until 1668, when Aborigine resistance, and the lack of progress in retaking any other parts of the island persuaded the colonial authorities to abandon this final stronghold and withdraw from Taiwan altogether. In 1974, Chiang Ching-kuo implemented the 10 major construction projects, the beginning foundations that helped Taiwan transform into its current export-driven economy. Since the 1990s, a number of Taiwan-based technology firms have expanded their reach around the world. Well-known international technology companies headquartered in Taiwan include personal computer manufacturers Acer Incorporated and ASUS, mobile phone maker HTC, as well as electronics manufacturing giant Foxconn, which makes products for Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft. Computex Taipei is a major computer expo, held since 1981. Today Taiwan has a dynamic, capitalist, export-driven economy with gradually decreasing state involvement in investment and foreign trade. In keeping with this trend, some large government-owned banks and industrial firms are being privatized. Real growth in GDP has averaged about 8% during the past 3 decades. Exports have provided the primary impetus for industrialization. The trade surplus is substantial, and foreign reserves are the world's 5th largest. The currency of Taiwan is the new Taiwan dollar. Since the beginning of the 1990s, the economic ties between Taiwan and the People's Republic of China have been very prolific. As of 2008, more than $150 billion have been invested in the PRC by Taiwanese companies. Although the economy of Taiwan benefits from this situation, some have expressed the view that the island has become increasingly dependent on the mainland Chinese economy. A 2008 white paper by the Department of Industrial Technology states that Taiwan should seek to maintain stable relations with China while continuing to protect national security, and avoiding excessive sinicization of Taiwanese economy. Others argue that close economic ties between Taiwan and mainland China would make any military intervention by the PLA against Taiwan very costly, and therefore less probable. Taiwan's total trade in 2010 reached an all-time high of $526.04 billion, according to Taiwan's Ministry of Finance. Both exports and imports for the year reached record levels, totaling $274.64 billion and $251.4 billion, respectively. In 2001, agriculture constituted only 2% of GDP, down from 35% in 1952. Traditional labor-intensive industries are steadily being moved offshore and with more capital and technology-intensive industries replacing them. High-technology industrial parks have sprung up in every region in Taiwan. The ROC has become a major foreign investor in the PRC, Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam. It is estimated that some 50,000 Taiwanese businesses and 1 million businesspeople and their dependents are established in the PRC. Because of its conservative financial approach and its entrepreneurial strengths, Taiwan suffered little compared with many of its neighbors in the 1997 Asian financial crisis. Unlike its neighbors, South Korea and Japan, the Taiwanese economy is dominated by small and medium-sized businesses, rather than the large business groups. The global economic downturn, however, combined with poor policy coordination by the new administration and increasing bad debts in the banking system, pushed Taiwan into recession in 2001, the first whole year of negative growth since 1947. Due to the relocation of many manufacturing and labor-intensive industries to the PRC, unemployment also reached a level not seen since the 1970s oil crisis. This became a major issue in the 2004 presidential election. Growth averaged more than 4% in the 2002-2006 period and the unemployment rate fell below 4%. The ROC often joins international organizations, especially ones that also include the People's Republic of China, under a politically neutral name. The ROC has been a member of governmental trade organizations such as the World Trade Organization under the name Separate Customs Territory of Taiwan, Penghu, Kinmen, and Matsu, Chinese Taipei, since 2002.